Hello and welcome to part 2 of the Myriad 5 playout training video. In this video, we'll be concentrating on looking at favorites, the library, and then spend the rest of the video looking at the log. We'll see how to edit the log, to add content to the log, to schedule into the log, export sections from the log, and finally, how to customize the log to look the way you want. So grab a coffee and let's jump in. So what are favorites and why would you use them? Favorites are basically shortcuts to your favorite things on the media wall, and you can trigger them in many different ways for easy access. To access the favorites, click on the Favorites tab. On the default layout we're using here, it's just below the media wall. However, it is different in different layouts. Here we have some favorites. We have 20 in this particular set, and we can see only the first 5 are currently occupied. If we wanted to play a favorite, simply click on it.
Hot FM.
And the favorite is played. You can also drag favorites directly into players, directly into the log. You can also trigger favorites by some external hardware, such as our K500 and K600 Myriad control keyboards, as well as some mixing desks, including the DNR Webstation Airlight and the AEQ Capital and Forum mixers. Any media item on the media wall could be assigned as a favorite. There are several ways to do so, so let's have a look at a few of the options. The simplest way is to go to the View menu and choose the Display Media Browser option. This brings up the media browser, which is a kind of mini version of the media wall. From here, you can drag items directly onto the favorites. So if I want to add this one to favorite number 6, just pick it up and drop it on there. However, you can actually drag from anywhere in Myriad Playout onto favorites, so I can also take items from the log, drop them on there, or I can even go across to the media wall, pick up the item I'm interested in, hover over the favorites tab, and then drop it on there. Finally, from the media wall, I could highlight an item and just click Add to Favorite, and it will be added to the next available favorite in the selected set. But what do we mean by sets and how can we use them when we're broadcasting a show? Well, sets are just simply a collection of favorites. At the moment, we're set to have 20 favorites within each set, although the number can be changed depending on your configuration. The sets themselves are displayed in this left-hand window, which can be either open as it is right now or collapsed to give you more access to the favorites themselves. Currently, we only have a single set in here, my first favorite set. So let's try adding a new set and see what happens. Click on the Add New Set button. It creates a completely empty new favorite set. We can rename it by pressing the Rename button on the ribbon and giving it a new title. So now we have a new set called Liam's Stuff, but there's currently nothing in it. So pushing any of the buttons on the favorite panel here, or even pushing some of the buttons on a K600 keyboard wouldn't do anything. So let's try adding some content using some of the techniques we saw a few minutes ago. We can add a jingle in, we can add a different jingle here. We could go and get a song, put that in. We could even go to the library and do the same thing, though I don't think we actually saw that last time around, but it works exactly the same as getting it from the media wall. As you can see now, this set has different things, different media items in favorites 1 to 4 to our original one. So if I press number 1 with my first favorite set highlighted,
Hot FM.
it plays that jingle. If I go on to Liam's Stuff and play and do the same thing.
Radio 24/7. This is Hot FM. FM.
So the media item that was played is affected by which set is selected. Now you can set up as many different sets as you need, with each set having different content in, and you can switch between them on the fly, as we did there just by selecting the different set from the set menu here. This means that you can have sets, favorite sets that are dedicated to shows, to parts of shows, to features, to individuals, whatever you need. And you can set as many of them as you like, so it doesn't really matter. There's no restriction on how many you set up. You'll also notice that we are currently looking at the personal sets, as indicated at the top here. But we have the option to switch to shared sets at the bottom of the screen here. So if we click on that, we move to our shared sets. Now, these are a different set of favorites that are available to everyone in the station, not just the person logged in. So the personal sets are specific for the user that is logged in to Myriad Playout, whereas the shared sets are available to everyone who uses the system. I noticed that when I add one of the favorites earlier on that I actually added a slightly different media item type. This one here is a rotating media item type. You may remember from part one of the course that media items can actually be rotating items, which is a list of other media items to play. Now, just like any other media item, a rotating item can be added to a favorite set. So here we have a rotating item in number 1. What that means in practice is when I play it once.
Now, here comes Hot FM Radio 24/7.
It'll play that item. If I press it again,
Hot FM.
It'll play a different item. And if I play it a third time,
This is Hot FM Radio 24/7.
So by having just one favorite, I can actually have a carousel of different items be played. Now that we know how to assign media items to favorites, let's take a quick look at the different play options we actually have, because there are 4 different play modes available within favorites, and those can be switched using the option buttons on the ribbon at the top of the favorites menu. So at the moment we are in start new mode, which means if I play this favorite twice,
Hot FM, Hot FM, Hot FM.
Each time I play it, it opens up a new version of that media item in different players. So if I played 4 in quick succession,
Hot FM.
I'd use all 4 media players to play that thing 4 times. Let's try changing it to restart mode.
Hot FM.
In restart mode, every time you trigger the favorite again, it will re-queue it to the beginning and play it rapidly. So you can make it kind of play repeatedly over and over again, which is great for sound effects and things like that. Okay, let's move on to start-stop mode. As you might expect, this one does very simply start or stop the media item. So let's try a slightly longer one to demonstrate this. Okay, so each time I press it, it starts. When I click it again, it stops. The final item is an interesting one. This is single item mode. And what this does is locks Myriad Playout to only ever be playing one favorite at a time. So what will happen is if I start one favorite and it's playing, and then I trigger a second favorite, it will actually fade down the first one and play the second one, which is really great for doing sequences. So let me show you how that would work in practice. I'm going to play this 7-second jingle, and 2 or 3 seconds in, I'm going to play this 6-second jingle. And you'll see the 7-second one that's played first will be faded out in favor of the second one being played. So let's try it.
Now, here comes. This is Hot FM Radio 24/7.
Now, if you're watching carefully, you'd have seen on the media players that the volume control actually drops down as it's playing. So let's try that again and keep an eye out to see if you can spot it this time.
Now, this is Hot FM Radio 24/7.
So those are the 4 playout modes. Myriad will remember which mode you're in, so even if the favorites aren't on screen and you trigger one, it will still play it.
Hot FM.
Of course, there will be occasions where you want to remove a favorite. So to do that, just simply click on the clear button, then click on the favorite you wish to clear. The final thing we're going to look at in favorites is using the options on the view menu to change the amount of favorites on screen and also some of the other options to do with how favorites look and act. So first thing to do is click on the View tab. Here we've got some different options. The view style allows you to change from circular to linear. So if I was to trigger this one right now, it'll be
Hot FM.
a circular progress bar. If I change it to be a linear progress bar,
Hot FM.
it just changes the way the progress bar is displayed. The number of rows and columns is also controllable from in here. So if I wanted to only have 10 favorites, for example, I may opt for just 2 rows of 5, or I could have a lot more if I wanted to. Finally, we can set the colors to be displayed and also whether the pictures should be displayed. This is very similar to the options that we examined earlier on the media wall. Basically, you can choose whether favorites should show category colors, item type colors, and also pictures. The library offers an alternative way of viewing the content on your media wall. The media wall itself is oriented around media ID numbers. So you start at number 1 and you scroll along numerically. And your music might be in one area and your songs may be in a different area. But essentially everything is oriented around that media ID number. The library is a little different. Whereas the media wall is oriented around number, the library is oriented around content type and category, with the tree view on the left-hand side being the principal way that you can navigate the content. So instead of just looking at the song area, you now can look at all songs, or you can look inside a particular category of songs. And instead of things being numbered, you can also change the order by type, by title, by artist, by category, or any other of the fields by simply clicking on the column headers. To find content using the library, you have several different options. As we've just seen, you can expand the songs, links, or any other of the primary media item type lists on the tree view. Click into the subcategory and it will display all of the content that is within that category. But you can also search for things. So you can type in a basic search. So I could type in an artist name, and if it can find anything, it will display that information. You can also do an advanced search, which allows you to have far more fields to search. If I click on the advanced search button, that expands the search to encompass the advanced search features. And then you can tick on any of these fields to enable them. So let's say I wanted to see everything in a particular media range. I could click on the media ID, type in the range I'm looking for, hit search, and the contents will be displayed. We can combine these by saying I want to look for something within a range that is a song that is in pop category, hit search, and only items that meet that criteria will be displayed. There are multiple tabs you can use for setting the search criteria, and you can combine any of the fields to get the exact search that you are looking for. Once you've found the items you're looking for, you can play them in many of the same ways as you could on the media wall. You can pick up an item and you could drag it directly into a player. You can also drag it directly into the log. You can even drag it directly into a favorite. You can double click on an item to play it, or you can use the options on either the Home tab or the Play tab. As we're here, we might as well take a look at the other options on the ribbon. We've got the ability on the Play tab to be able to play or cue the selected item. You can also play or cue the hook from the selected item, or preview either all of the selected item, just the hook, or just the extra from the selected item. Moving back to the Home tab, a lot of these options will be very familiar from the media wall, so we can either play or cue the selected item. We can also add it to a pad, add it to a favorite, add it to the log. We can display the item information for the selected item, which, if you remember, will give us the information about when an item has been scheduled recently and whether using it right now would break any rules. We also have a Show in Smart Info button, which we didn't cover in the media wall, but basically this allows the Smart Info tile to be driven by this panel. And finally, we've got the advanced search, which we used a few moments ago to toggle the advanced or basic search criteria on and off. Over on the Edit tab, we can edit the selected item, we can export it, we can publish it, or we can delete it. And finally, on the View tab, we can choose whether to include hours, items that are restricted by date or hour, and also show by group. Let's have a quick talk about those two options because these are new things we haven't looked at before. Include hour date restricted items is an option that allows you to include items in the list here that shouldn't be available for scheduling. If I was to go and edit one of these items, on the Schedule tab, we can see that this is both available to be scheduled and available in every single hour of the week. But let's say we wanted to exclude this from being able to be scheduled from midday through till 6 o'clock in the evening. We could do that. Click on Save. Now, if I go back into Advanced Search and redo the search we did a few minutes ago, so I'm looking for this media range, this song, this pop, hit Search, we'll notice that the track we edited is no longer listed. And that is because we told the system that it was not available to be scheduled between midday and 6 p.m. And as it's 4 p.m. when I'm doing this video, that means it's excluded from the list. If, however, I was to go into the View menu here and tick the option or press the button to include items that are restricted and re-perform that search, it's back in there now. So this button allows us to filter the content of the display the content that's displayed in the search results to only include items that are available to be scheduled. Or if this option is selected as it is right now, it will include everything regardless of whether it can or can't be scheduled at this moment in time. Finally, on the View menu is the Show Group By. If we push this button, it creates a new panel here just above the search results. And what we can actually do is we can drag the header from any of the columns onto the group panel, and it will actually show the results grouped by that criteria. So if I drag year onto there, it changes the view so that each of these items is now clustered by year. So we can see within this small category with very little in it, we've not got a lot, but we've actually got two songs that were in the same year. So they are now grouped by 2015, whereas all the others are individual years. And if you want to remove a grouping, just pick it up, drag it into the main areas till you see a cross, release, and that removes the grouping. For many stations, the log is one of the most important aspects of Myriad Playout. But what is it and what do we use it for? Let's have a look. The best way to describe the log is a list of content that will be used for either a live or automated show. The log is generally generated by a scheduling system such as Myriad Schedule, AutoTrack, or third-party systems such as Selector. It can also be manually created if the station prefers. A typical log will consist of jingles, music, commands, hardware events, adverts, voice tracks, pretty much anything that you would use. We'll look at all the different log items that you can include in your log later in this session. There's also two different ways that the log would be used, either in live or in auto fade. Live would be used whenever a presenter is actually presenting a show, and auto fade would be used whenever the system is expected to be running to automation. We'll be looking at all this in the next few minutes, so let's get started with the basic orientation of the log. For this section of the video, we've switched to the dual screen layout and we're using the right-hand screen, which is dedicated to the log to give us the most screen space and be able to show you things in detail. Here we've got the basic log layout. On the left-hand side is the estimated playtime for each of the log items. The next column tells you the log item type with the icons. We'll go through all those in a minute. Then you have the description, which for songs will be artist and title, and for everything else will just be description. Over towards the right, we've got the overall length, and for songs we will also have the end type and the intro displayed. And then the final column is the chain type, which is basically either a green circle for a go, a red square for a stop, or a yellow plus for a sweeper. On the extreme right, we've also got the home button, the page up and down buttons, the previous to next hour buttons, and the wastebasket. Then, of course, you've got the ribbon with all the various tools used for controlling the log. So you've got the home ribbon, which has all the basic functions, the edit ribbon, which allows you to edit the log, the hour import, which is primarily used for either scheduling content or importing content from a third-party scheduling system. And finally, the view, which allows you to customize the way the log looks. Okay, let's take a look in more detail at the types of items you might have in a typical log. Looking at the log we've got here, we've got several different log item types, but not all of them. But we'll go through the ones we have in turn. The top one is the special hour start item. You'll have one of these at the beginning of each hour in the log, and the log is always oriented around 1 hour blocks. The difference is it doesn't have an icon, and it tells you the overall length of the hour in terms of duration of content on the right hand side. It tells you the playout mode and also when which clock has been used to generate this hour. Next item in the list is a thing called an auto hook. Now, auto hook is a special item that will play the hooks from 2 or 3 other items in the hour. So we use these for promos, and we'll cover this in more detail in a few minutes. Next up is a song. This one happens to be the highlighted item, which is why it's in blue. So if I click here, you can see where the highlight moves around. We know it's a song because it's got a song icon. It's also using the song colors. On the right-hand side, where the timing is, the timing in brackets is actually the intro length of this song. And the character next to the overall length, either an S, an E, an F, or an SF, stands for either sustain, end, fade, or slow fade. The next item is a link item, which is basically a jingle. They work very much in the same way as songs. In this particular case, on the highlighted one right now, it's actually going to be a sweeper. We know that because the chain type is a yellow plus instead of a green circle. The next item in the list is a social post. In this particular case, this one is going to go to both Twitter and Facebook. If you double click on it, you can edit the text that will be sent to those social media platforms. Got a couple more songs. Then we've got a script item. And again, if I double click, I can access the script. Finally, we've got an advert here, which is in yellow. This is indicated by the icon here, which actually can be changed depending on what type of currency you have. So it can either be pounds, dollars, euros, whatever you want to. So that's a quick run through of the log item types that are on display right now. Other log items you may come across include basic media items, which are media items on the media wall that aren't links or songs. Commands, which allow you to add script or hardware events to your log. Absolute times, which are used for putting specific times into logs. It could be for back timing purposes or for waiting for a specific time. Reset times, which are used for resetting all the timing for items below the reset time markers, which is particularly useful when you're doing talk shows. Split cart groups, which are used for split play out when you want to play jingles localized for different splits. And finally, split advert breaks, which you do the same thing but play adverts for split play out for localized content. Now that we know what the log is, let's look at how we can use it and edit it. First thing we can do is just simply drag things around within the log. So if we need to change the order, we can pick up items and we can move them around. We can also drag things from the media wall, favorites, or library directly into the log. We can remove items we don't want from the log by either right-clicking on them, doing delete item, and choosing either soft delete or full delete. Another option is to click on the time on the left-hand side of the log item. That does what's called a soft delete, which means it leaves it in the log for you to see, but it won't be treated as if it was there. You can unsoft delete by clicking in the same area. Finally, you can pick up an item and you can drag it into the waste bin. That will remove it from the log altogether. The most recently deleted item in the waste bin can also be restored by double-clicking. If you want to insert an item that isn't from the media wall, you can right-click, choose Insert Item Before, and select the type of item you want to import. So if I want to put a social post in, click on Social, give it a title, say which formats to put it out on, and then hit OK. If I want to swap a couple of items, I can click on an item, and on the Edit ribbon we have a swap button. Click on Swap, and then click on the item you want to swap it with, and then click Swap again, and 2 items will swap. There's also a right-click and shortcut menu for this, so you can see here's Control-W is actually the shortcut key for swapping. So it's very quick to say Control-W, Control-W, 2 items will swap. Now you also notice we had cut, copy, and paste in here. You can take a section, you can cut it, and then you can paste it in further down. You can also highlight multiple items by holding down the Shift button and then clicking. You can see these are the selected items. We can now use Control-X, Control-C, and Control-V to cut, copy, and paste these as normal. So we can cut them here and paste them here. If you want to exchange something for a media item for something of a similar type, especially for songs, you can use the Replace option. Highlight a song, click on Replace, and the system will suggest any other songs it can in the same category. Here you can see it's suggested songs from the same category. If we click on them, this section down here shows us whether using this item would break any of the rules. So we can't use the Backstreet Boys right now, but It's Raining Men is fine. So all we need to do is double click on it and the item is changed to be It's Raining Men. You can also highlight multiple sections and then use the delete to rapidly remove lots of things from the log. However, you need to be careful with this as there's no easy way to recover this once you've deleted them. You can change the end type of items in the log by simply clicking on the chain type. A red dot, a red square rather, means that this item will stop at the end. A green circle means it will carry on automatically into the next item. And a yellow cross means it will be swept into the intro of the next item. If you need to change the playout mode for a particular hour, you need to do that by right-clicking on the hour start marker. Now you can find the hour start very quickly by either clicking on the previous or next buttons to jump to the hour start marker at the beginning of the next or previous item. Then right-click, change hour mode, and choose either live, which is indicated by an orange strip on the left-hand side, or auto fade, which is indicated by a green strip. Alternatively, you could do the same thing on the hour import menu. Before we move on, I wanted to have a quick look at some of the log items in a bit more detail. Let's start with the auto hook item. So an auto hook is basically a promo that is going to play the hooks from some songs coming up within the log within the next X hours. To edit the details for the auto hook, double click on it will open up the auto hook. preferences. From in here, you can set a few things. So you can set a media item to play at the beginning of the auto hook. This should be a jingle or something that introduces the auto hook. You can also play a piece of a media item in between each hook. This is often a burst of static or some of a production element that will help mask any transitions between hooks. And finally, you can choose a media item to play at the end of the auto hook. So this might be a jingle saying the list keep here or whatever you want to do. You can also set the number of hook items to play. So currently it's set to 3, which will mean it'll pick 3 songs from the coming hour with hooks and use them to build the auto hook. You can also say how many hours to look ahead. So normally this would only be 1 hour, but if you had building a promo that said coming up on the breakfast show today, and your breakfast show is 3 hours long, you might choose to have it looking more than 1 hour ahead. You can choose whether it should be the next X items, random X items, or next X items in reverse. And this just decides when it's picking the songs that include the hooks, whether it should be the next 3 items in a row that have hooks, 3 random items from the hour that have hooks, or the next 3 but in reverse. And finally, you can set a media item to play if no songs in the selected time frame have any hooks. So let's go ahead and set a few of these options just to see what an auto hook would sound like. So I'm going to click on Browse here, and I'm going to choose jingle or the media item number 1, which is a jingle that just says in the next 30 minutes you'll hear. I'm going to choose a little jingle here which is just says Hot FM, which isn't ideal for an auto hook, but it'll give you an idea of what it sounds like. And then I'm going to choose a jingle to play at the end of my item. So I'm going to play this one here. 3 songs is okay for the next 1 hour, so I'm going to leave all the rest of the items there. So there we can see the, if I scroll back up, we can see the auto hook item, 3 items in there. Now what does it sound like? Well, let's listen.
In the next 30 minutes, in the next 30 minutes, you'll hear.
I love my life. I am powerful. I am beautiful. I am free.
Hot FM.
On heaven, I wake with good intention.
Hot FM.
Oh, baby, I'm tired of talking. Grab your coat and let's start walking.
Radio 24/7. This is Hot FM. FM.
Okay, so not the best example there, but you got the idea of how you can use auto hooks in your automated or live shows to provide on-the-fly promos based on exactly what is actually coming up within that hour. A few other things we can edit. We've already seen that we can double-click on a social post to edit the script on the social post, and those will be automatically posted to both Facebook and Twitter depending on your options. So just after this jingle plays, that social post will be posted, and then the next song will play. In fact, if we double click on a song, it opens up the segue editor to allow us to adjust the segue between, but more on the segue editor later. If you had a absolute time or any other type of item that had editable values, so I've put an absolute time in, you can double click on those at any time to change them. Same way with scripts or anything else that you can edit the settings for. All you need to do is double click on them and you'll be able to change the settings. Finally, there are a number of other options on the right-click menu which you can explore in your own time. Next, let's talk about how we actually fill the log with content. There are several different options open to you. Some of them will be relying on Myriad schedule or external scheduling systems such as AutoTrack or third-party systems such as Selector, and some of them will involve manually creating content. So let's have a look at all the different options in this section, and hopefully you can find the mixture of using these which best suits your station. Here we can see the log on the right-hand side currently has nothing in it whatsoever. So there is nothing being scheduled in here, and the simplest way of filling content into a given hour is by clicking on the Fill This Hour link on the right-hand side of the log. So if I wanted to fill the 1 o'clock hour or the 12 o'clock hour, I can click on the fill this hour option. What that has done is it's just gone off and checked with Myriad Schedule as to exactly what should be scheduled in this hour. So for every hour of the week, Myriad Schedule has a thing called a clock, which is basically a plan for what type of content should be included. That includes the structure of the hour, as well as what songs and jingles should be allowed within the hour, any other items that are in the hour, and also any rules that should be applied for that hour. So we can see a very simple hour here. We've got an auto hook at the beginning, but then we're just basically playing a couple of songs and a jingle and carrying on through the whole hour doing that. So that is the simplest way of adding content to the system, but that is also assuming that you have already set up Myriad Schedule, which of course we'll be covering later in the course. Another option would be to simply drag some content into an empty hour. Let's go to our jingle section and pull a jingle in. Drop it onto the 2 o'clock hour. You can see it's created an hour start marker and then added our first jingle. We could then continue to add content by simply dragging it in underneath. However, this isn't a very efficient way of creating a log. There is a much easier way. If you go to a layout with a pad, you can use the pad to build up your show. So using all the tools we've used before, we can build up the plan for our show. When we're happy, we can simply go to the Mix Send tab and send to log. This has to go into a completely empty hour. So let's put this into the 1 o'clock hour. Here you can see the content of our pad has now been added to the log. But what about if you wanted to add more than 1 hour at a time, maybe a full day or even a full week using Myriad Schedule? Well, that's very easy to do. You go to the log, you click on the Hour Import tab, and you click on the Schedule Log Import button. What this does is it will go and check Myriad Schedule and fill in the gaps or fill in any gaps in the log that are currently unscheduled. So the hours we've already put in today, the ones we put in manually or the ones we use Myriad Schedule to fill already, will remain in place. This will simply fill in all of the gaps. Now the way this system works in practice is it actually uses a hierarchy. First of all, it will check to see if there is an external scheduled log file available. So if you're using a third-party scheduling system such as Selector, then it can check to see if that log file exists. If the log file doesn't exist, then it will check to see if Myriad Schedule has any logs available or any clocks assigned for the hours, and will then use them to fill. In this case, we're only using Myriad Schedule, so that will be its first stop. As you can see, it's currently asking me to schedule from 3 o'clock in the afternoon through till midnight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just change that to 0. So this is now going to schedule from effectively 1 second past midnight this morning through till 23:59 tonight. So click on the schedule button. System goes off. And you can see this panel on the right hand side is giving us updates as to how the progress of the scheduling is going. It takes a few moments to schedule a day. And there we go. So now if we scroll down the log, we've got hours in every single hour, or content in every single hour of the log for the whole day. If I wanted to do more than one day, just simply change the dates. If you see the longer you pick, the longer it will take to schedule. You can also see that this video hasn't been speeded up or anything. This is how long it's taking in real time. So it's not a massively long task usually. There we have it. We've now scheduled up until the end of the 20th. The final way we're going to look at for keeping content in the log is actually using a feature that's exclusive for Myriad schedule users, which is maintaining a rolling log either 1 hour, 1 day, or 1 week ahead. Let's have a look how we would do that. In order to do that, we need to go into the settings menu and then do database settings and then database settings again. This also opens up the database settings window, and the tab we're interested in is the stations database. And then we want to pick the station we're working on. In this case, we've only got one, Hot FM, but if you've got more than one station, they'd be listed here. Double click on Hot FM to access the settings. Now we need to go to the Schedule tab. And this section here, automatic schedule management, is the bit that we're interested in. And we've got several options. We can say it should never use it, even in an emergency, in which case, no matter what, Myriad schedule will never automatically kick in. If the log runs out, with this option, if Myriad is an active playout and it comes to an hour in the log that is not got anything scheduled, it will automatically use Myriad schedule to fill that hour. For the next 1 hour, what that does is something very similar to the one previously, but it will maintain 1 hour ahead. So instead of only scheduling a few minutes before it needs it, it will schedule an hour before it needs it. Up to the full next day, maintains the schedule for 24 hours ahead. But it's worded as full next day because it doesn't do it on an hour by hour basis. Usually it does it in a full 24-hour chunk. So typically the way this works is maybe 20 past or 20 to 1 in the morning, the system will automatically schedule the next full day. Finally, you could select up to the next 7 full days. The first time you do this, the system will fill 7 days ahead of where it needs to be or where you currently are. And then each following day, it will schedule another 24 hours on the end. So the system will maintain a rolling full 7 days ahead at all times. The other option we have here is exactly what time to check. So currently it's set to 20 minutes to the hour. So that means that 20 minutes to the top of each hour, the system will check to see if it needs to generate any log and will then use that information to trigger the next auto schedule session. So you can set this to be a time when you don't have much else going on in your log. So for example, you wouldn't want to put this to be 0 because at the top of each hour, typically a lot of logs will have a lot of other content, lots of jingles playing or station updates or hardware events. Whereas maybe at 20 to the top of the hour or 40 minutes past the hour, there's usually not a lot going on, usually just playing some content. So that's an ideal time for the system to kick in an automated process to do the scheduling. As we're here, we might as well have a quick look at the automatically remove log items after X days setting. With this option ticked, the system will maintain the Myriad log back a full 90 days. And anything greater than 90 days old will be automatically deleted, meaning you don't have to do any manual housekeeping or updating of the log. The system will maintain 90 days of log and then automatically delete after that. Click on OK to save the settings. OK. And now it's all set up. You may also need to delete things from the log. So let's look at a few options. We've already seen how we can delete individual items from the log, either soft delete by clicking on the time or using the right-click menu options, or a permanent delete, which removes it from the log, or even just picking it up and dropping it in the wastebasket. But sometimes you need to delete more than one thing at a time. You can hold down Shift and select multiple items. Then go to the Edit tab and click on the Delete button. It will ask you if you're sure, and if you are, click Yes. Sometimes you have to delete an entire hour from the log. You can do that by finding the hour start marker by clicking on the previous or next buttons or scrolling and selecting, right-clicking and choosing delete this entire hour from the log. When you select this option, you will be asked to confirm twice. And once you've confirmed it twice, the hour is removed from the log. And here you can see the hour is empty and be ready to be filled again. It is sometimes useful to be able to export a complete hour from the log. This might be so that you can reuse it later in the log, or it may be because you want to export the audio and the data from an hour in the log into a multi-track audio editing software such as Audacity or Audition or Hindenburg. So let's have a look at how we do both of those things. First thing we need to do is find the hour start marker again. So that can be done by either clicking previous next or scrolling up. Let's use previous. Here we have the 1 o'clock hour with the hour start marker is highlighted. So if I right click and do export, I have export this entire file hour as a log file or multi-track session file. So I'm going to select that option, and then we have our dialog for saving the file here. So I've got several different options really. If I do a XML file, then this is a data file that Myriad can import later. So the idea is that you can then save an entire section of the log and then reuse it later. Now that process can actually be automated via commands as well. So it's possible to have a command in the log that actually exports a show and then reinserts it later in the log. So you could have a show repeated later, but that's not what we're going to do right now. We're just going to try exporting as a file and then re-importing it later. We also have a few other options here. We could export an Audacity file, an Audition file, a Creative Cloud file, a Myriad 5 log section file, a Reaper project file, or a Hindenburg session file. Now, each of these multi-track audio editors have their own ways of working, and what this will do is actually create what's called a session file for each one. It will actually be a combination of all the audio needed for the hour being exported, along with all the metadata and positioning for that. So that will include things like when Myriad would be ducking audio around voice links or sweepers, as well as all of the segue points for the mixed content. So if you voice tracked a show, for example, you could then export it as an Audacity project file and mix it down to be a single audio file. So you can take a automated or voice tracked show and you can create a single 1 hour session out of it. Let's export a standard transport file. A standard XML file so that we can import it later. So I'm going to call this one my log and save it onto our desktop. Okay, so I'll click on there. Here we can see it's on my desktop. Okay, let's see how we would re-import that. What I'm going to do, so I'm going to go forward a few hours. Here we have the 3 o'clock hour. Currently there's something in here, but if I remove that, now you can see we don't have anything in there. So how would we import this into the 3 o'clock hour? Well, go to the hour import tab, and then instead of clicking on the schedule import log as we did in the last video, we want to drop this down and import a single hour from a log file. We can then choose the log file we want to import, my log, hit open, and it'll ask us to confirm the hour we wish to put it into. Hit OK, and there we have it. So that's one simple way you can take an hour from the log, export it as a file, and then re-import it later. Okay, let's try something a little bit more complex. If we jump to the 4 o'clock hour, see we've got some voice links in here as well as some sweepers. What we're going to do now is try exporting this as an Audacity session file so you can see how this would work with Audacity. So I'm going to right click on the hour star marker, export the entire file. This time I'm going to choose a folder. So on my desktop I'm going to choose my exported hours, and I'm going to change my type, my session type to Audacity project file. Hit save. And it says it's created the folder. So there we can see the data and the folder. Okay, so let's look in Audacity and see what that looks like. Okay, this is Audacity. If you're not familiar, Audacity is an absolutely free open source multi-track audio editor. It is pretty good place to learn about audio editing, particularly with multi-tracks. And because it's compatible with Myriad, it also means that you can do the kind of thing we're doing right now. So I'm going to open the Audacity project file. Ask me if I want to regenerate the alias summary files. It's always best to say yes to this. Now this does take a few seconds to do, so we might speed up the video just while it's rendering this. Here we go. You can see we've got all of our individual files, and if we scroll along there, we can see this is how the hour is unfolding. Here is an interesting one. Here we've got a voice link, so you can see this is a song. Then we've got a voice link and then another song. So if I zoom in a little bit, and if we turn on the envelope editing, you can see how this is a song that was playing. It's ducked down here while the voice link is on, and then also the same envelope is occurring here. We can carry on through the hour. So that gives us the entire hour in Audacity. Now, if we wanted to mix that down, we can export as MP3 and save it to wherever we want to. It's warning you that they'll be mixed down as one stereo file. We do want that, so we're going to hit OK. Can put in some metadata if we wish. This is going to take about 2 minutes to render. So again, we'll speed up the video just while that's happening. Okay, we've finished rendering that out now, so let's just check it's there. Okay, there's our MP3 file we created. Everything looks good. So we can close Audacity and head back to Myriad. Now that we have that hour as an MP3 file, we could also re-import it back into the media wall and then either schedule or manually place it in the log for repeat play. Before we move on from the log, it's probably worth having a quick look at the options on the ribbon. Now we've already seen what a lot of these options do, and we won't be repeating things we've already covered, but it's worth having a quick look and just going through some of the options that we haven't talked about so far. On the Home tab, the first button you'll see is the Home button. Now this is a really useful button because basically it will always take you to either the item that is playing or the item that ought to be playing. So currently we are not in active player mode. You can see the dashboard is in standby mode. So when we hit the Home button, it will take us to the item that Myriad Playout thinks ought to be playing right now. If, however, we were in an active player mode and we were scrolling down the log, pressing the Home button would take us back to the currently playing item. There's also a Home button over on the right-hand side here. Next up is Go To. Like the Home button, this is about navigating in the log, but instead of going home, this takes you to any point in the log that you wish. So if I want to see what's scheduled tomorrow at 9 o'clock in the evening, I can do so. Preview button allows you to preview the highlighted items. So if I want to preview Lena Marlin, click on the preview. You can see it's playing through the selected preview player in Myriad Playout. Replace and soft delete were covered in the editing section. Essentially, replace allows you to replace the highlighted item with another item from the same category, and soft delete allows you to rapidly remove the item from the log or restore it. The Segue Edit button accesses the Segue Editor, which is covered in a separate part of the video. You can change the chain type of the selected item using the buttons here. So we can change it from auto sweep. However, we cannot currently change any of the selected items to be stops because this is scheduled as an auto fade hour. And in an auto fade hour, things can't stop. It has to automatically schedule or carry on from the next item. If, however, we were to change the hour playout mode to be a live, then we can see the bar down the side here has turned orange. Now we can highlight green, red, or plus, depending on which one we want. The refresh button simply refreshes the view. Finally, the playout modes allow you to change the playout mode for the selected hour. So if we wanted to go into playout mode live, hit live, and wherever we've highlighted, we'd go into live mode from that point. However, this error message here, or this message here, is telling us that the hour we've selected is a long way from now, i.e. it is tomorrow evening. So if I was to hit home and then hit live, that would put me into live mode in the current hour. If I was to hit auto fade, it would change the hour mode to be in auto fade mode, and we'd be ready to go in auto fade. And if I click back on standby, it puts us back into standby, in which Myriad Player isn't in any type of active playout mode. Next, on the edit menu, we have item information, which is the same information we saw previously on the media wall, i.e. information about when an item has been scheduled to be played and whether using it right now would break any rules. If you highlight an item that has details that can be edited, like for example social posts or scripts, you can use the Edit Item Details button. Cut, copy, paste, swap, soft delete and delete were covered extensively in the editing section and do exactly what you would expect. We've already talked about the Replace Item option, which was also on the Home menu. And the Add Item allows you to add an additional media log item, and this will be added above the highlighted position in the log. Finally, on this ribbon is the Can Be Dropped and Can Be Auto Faded options. If we highlight an item and unselect Can Be Dropped, that means that Myriad Playout cannot drop this item even if it needed to in auto fade mode. And Can Be Auto Faded means that Myriad could elect to fade this item out early if it needed to. If we unselect both those options, then this item can neither be dropped or faded early when in auto fade mode. In the Hour Import tab, we can see we have an hour playout mode selection. This is similar to what we have on the hour start mark. It allows us to choose whether an hour should be a live hour or an auto faded hour. The Refresh Times button goes through and updates all the timing. So if the length of items has changed, you can press that button to update all to the latest. The next two buttons are only enabled when an hour is in live mode. So let's switch to live mode. Once set, the Set All to Auto or Set All to Stop will go through and set everything below the selected item to be either a stop or a go chain type. So let's try changing them all to stops. Back to goes. Next up is the Schedule Log button. You may remember we used this for using Myriad Schedule to schedule a period of time or importing a single log file. The Log Reports button allows you to access some frequently used reports that are related to Myriad scheduling or logs in general. You can drop down the list and see the selection of different reports available here. You can also print the hour or export the hour using these two buttons. Finally, you can remove hours from the log using the Remove Hours button. The View tab allows us to change a few of the ways in which we can view the log and also the way that the log will interact with some other tiles. The first option is the Show in Smart Info. You may remember from the orientation that Smart Info is a panel that shows you information about the selected title or artist. So let's try clicking on an item in the log. See, I've highlighted Nickelback and it showed me the Wikipedia and the Twitter page for Nickelback. If, however, I deselect the Show in Smart Info, clicking the log will not update the Smart Info panel. Let's switch back to the default layer. The Show Buttons option allows you to toggle whether the buttons on the right-hand side of the log are visible or not. The next section allows you to customize the way the log looks. Let's run through all the options in turn. Double height log items changes each log item to be twice the height of the previous view. This allows the title and artist to be on separate lines, which means that longer titles are displayed correctly. But this is the expense of how many items can be displayed in the log at any one time. Related to this is the Show Artist on Second Line. If you do not wish to have the artist on the second line, you can have it side by side like this. Use Log Colors allows you to say whether the log should have used the default item type colors or just be grey. Here we can see the default color for songs is pink and the default color for jingles is green. Show the item's category allows you to show the category for both songs and links on the systems. Similarly, the Show Items Media ID toggles showing the ID of the item in the log. In double height, it's displayed below the time, and in single height mode, it is displayed in a separate field. Finally, Show Icons if item has a hook allows you to say whether or not the icon column is displayed on the log. Finally, the options allows you to change a couple of the options to do with the log. The first one, automatically jump to home after X seconds, allows you to set how long it will be before Myriad jumps back to home if you haven't moved or edited the log. So currently it's set to 120 seconds. That means as I'm scrolling around the log, it will never jump back. If I stop doing anything with the log and I don't move or edit any items, then after 120 seconds, the system will automatically jump back to the most recently played item or the item that is currently playing. The second option, open the segue editor when double clicking an item. This allows you to easily open the segue editor by just double clicking. Finally, jump to now when dragging an item over the home button on the vertical navigation buttons. What that basically means is you can take an item, you can drag to home, and it will go back to the home position. And this is particularly useful if you were scrolled all the way down the log and you saw an item you wanted to play next. You could pick it up, scroll over home, and drop it, ready to be played. And that's it for the log. Next we'll have to look at the dashboard, and then we can see how it all comes together for both live and automated programming. In this video we've covered a lot of ground in a fairly short time, so let's recap over what we actually have covered. We started off with favorites, learning how to use favorites, assign media items to the favorites, and also trigger them. Then we moved on to the library, seeing how the library provided an alternative way of viewing the content on your media wall. Next, we moved on to the log. We spent some time looking at editing log, adding content, and scheduling within the log. We also looked at how to export log sections to both be reused in Myriad and also for third-party systems such as Audacity. And finally, we looked at how you could customize the log to make it work the way you want. In the next video, we'll be looking at various other aspects of Myriad Playout, including the dashboard, smart info, and pretty much everything else. So I look forward to seeing you soon. It might be time to take a short break now before we move on to part 3 of the Myriad training course.